Oh, come on. We want the Joe Biden, Donald Trump debates. That is what America needs.
Well, I'm the politics editor at Rare, and we care about our viewers and we care about traffic, but I do care about these issues. It's part of what we do. I honestly think that younger people, the millennial generation, a lot of the people who are looking at Rand Paul's page and that came out and voted for his father, do have different attitudes about things like marijuana, gay marriage, and foreign policy and civil liberties. That all ties into that. I think we have this strange concoction where, as you said, John, on the social issues, they are certainly veering what some people would call left. I would argue that even conservative, more freedom. I mean, we could go that way. But also when it comes to sort of your bedrock, old-fashioned, Ronald Reagan, Barry Goldwater, government's not the solution to everything, I think millennials are probably open to that idea more than sort of their post-New Deal parents were, who looked to the government for everything. A perfect cultural example, also a business and political example it's become, of that is Uber. I think Hillary Clinton made a big mistake when she talked about the gig economy and attacking that, because how many people who might be inclined to vote for Hillary Clinton in this city or in Los Angeles or other urban areas probably take Uber on a regular basis and think the free market is just fine and dandy and a wonderful thing. I think that's sort of the strange or unique concoction that we see with younger people, that they don't look to the government necessarily for solutions like the left once did, or maybe their parents did. At the same time, they don't want the government in their bedrooms or tell them what they can smoke and so on and so on.
I don't know anyone who's ever looked to the government for solutions. I know people who've looked to the government to do the will of the people in a democracy, but I've never known anyone who looked to the government to solve their problems.
But when that takes my tax dollars or your tax dollars, we're talking about government, which is the old left-right debate that we always have. And yeah, I would say that we've had government's gotten bigger and bigger. We've got an $18 trillion debt. I think young people are probably worried about that debt in a way that a lot of those Tea Partiers were a couple years ago before they got excited about
Sure, but those young people also
Trump.
support a strong social safety net. Those young people also don't want to send other young people to die in stupid illegal wars, and those young people also want the government to get out of our private life in terms of prohibiting tax-paying, consenting adults from marrying who they love, or letting law-abiding citizens smoke whatever they want to smoke as long as they're not harming anyone else's person or property. So I don't think it's really an easy left-right issue.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's a concoction, and that's sort of what millennials are. And you're right. If we're talking about student loans, that's a much different attitude than if we're talking about some other big government aspect.
I mean, if you ask millennials to vote on Senator Elizabeth Warren's proposed plan, when you see that college kids have to pay a 7% interest rate on their government loans for school, but the banks that ripped us off and wrecked our economy pay 0.75%. Elizabeth Warren wanted those kids to pay the same rate the banks that ripped us off paid, and that wasn't even allowed to get a vote in Congress. What's sad is that so many millennials don't know about this because there was so little media coverage of this,
right.
Either on Facebook or on the big news networks, but I saw more coverage about it on social media than I ever saw on Fox or MSNBC or CNN.
Right. Well, I think, and look, this panel's about politics, obviously. We're talking about politics and millennials, but I'm most interested in where millennials are politically and how that relates to what the business many of you have in this room. I brought up the Uber example for this reason. Do you think, John or Benny or Vince, anybody, I mean, to me, watching Hillary go after Uber was, here's a woman of another generation on the left who thinks it's bad that government doesn't have its grimy hands all over something like Uber. That's the way I took that. Am I wrong as a young libertarian, or maybe not that
I don't
young,
know enough about the story. I know that there have been many grievances against Uber's practices worldwide, but I don't know enough about what Hillary Clinton... did she attack the entire organization?
She was talking about protecting workers in a way. I mean, Uber's a rousing success. I mean, people love Uber. The drivers love it. The customers love it. Most of my friends love it. I mean, any thoughts?
My only take is that nobody other than Hillary Clinton should know the benefits of having a private driver.
Well,
and I think that she should totally be for Uber. I mean, right? Like, having private drivers are great.
I just think it's a good. I mean, you're right. But I think it's just a good example of the free market at work in a way that a lot of your sort of traditional conservative ideas about what government should and should not do sort of ties into a current phenomenon within the market that works for people. I think it could encourage people to see other non-government solutions, if that makes sense. I couldn't fly I flew into LAX last week, and I could not order an Uber. Why? Because the airport's owned by the city of Los Angeles, and they've got some kind of scheme worked out with the cab companies, and I had to pay $55 for a cab, and when I got to Uber back, it was $16. I don't think I'm the only person that's had that experience, and I think that probably resonates with people across the ideological spectrum towards being sympathetic towards free market solutions.
And these things change at the speed of light, right? Like, and it's really hard to keep up. There's a new platform or thing that's pushed on you as a journalist to start publishing on every week. I know homeboy Rand Paul was asked about the Ashley Madison scandal by one of my colleagues, Dave Weigel, and he goes, I don't know about Ashley Madison, who is she? And, you know, these things, they just change. And at some capacity, like, you have, like, I kind of feel sorry for the candidates because there's so many things, I can hardly keep up with them. How many people here are on Snapchat? It's about half the room. How many people here are on Facebook? I mean, everybody, right? But I think everybody in this room remembers when Facebook was like a niche thing. A thing that, like, very few people had, that very few people used, that was poo-pooed by journalists all around the country.
It's true. Look how far Uber's come in 2 years. Although I don't think any
Absolutely.
millennials will vote for Donald Trump because they didn't like how Hillary Clinton criticized Uber's labor practices.
Right. I will build you the greatest, the classiest Uber, the best
I can do
Uber.
something better than Uber. It's
I've
going to be
taken the best
tremendous,
Ubers in the world.
tremendously bigger than Uber.
A classy
It's going to be
Uber.
Uber. It's going to be huge.
Well, that's actually the perfect opportunity. We're talking about, that's a pretty good impression, John. If we're talking about some of the things that have excited Republican voters about these frontrunners, right now it's Donald Trump and Ben Carson, it's the ugliest parts of the conservative movement in the Republican Party, in my opinion, and I dare say, and I don't speak for them, the opinion of many millennials. Donald Trump, the thing that made his polls rise in June was calling how people perceived it, Mexicans rapists. That was the first thing. Ben Carson with his comments about, you know, can a Muslim be president? He didn't think they should be able to. Me coming from the right, I've had my own past in talk radio where sort of those things were catered to in ways that I'm embarrassed about now, but I still see it in the Republican Party. I still see it in the conservative movement. I do not see it en masse the way I do with the people who are excited about Trump and Ben Carson, or maybe Mike Huckabee said something. I do not see those ugly attitudes, and I have no hesitation in using that word, as much with millennials as I do their parents and grandparents, and I'm talking about the right. And I think that relates to what we try to do at RARE and sort of servicing that millennial audience. I think it relates to, you know, how elections might pan out when these 85 to 90 million millennials start voting. I just think it's a very different attitude. John, you mentioned illegal immigration. I mean, I want border security. I think we should have border security. I also want an immigration system where people who want to come to this country and work and do jobs that we need done can do it freely. I don't think that's you could say that without demeaning Hispanics. But I think the thing that excites many Republican voters are the things that do demean people. And it bothers a lot of people on the right to hear that. But I don't think millennials have those same attitudes. If any of you would want to comment on that.
I'd say millennials in Texas, where I live, want the border secured. That's what I got to say.
Right. But do they insist on and do they benefit from and capitalize on politically from demeaning people as a rule in the way that some of these other candidates do?
Of course not. And the way that people go about speaking about the issues and their demeanor and what they say and the verbiage around them obviously does matter to millennials. But I would disagree a little bit with what you're saying that if you take immigration, marriage, all of these issues, I want us to get back to almost what you said about the issue of being a disruptor and talk about technology and talk about economic growth. That's what that I do completely agree is what really gets millennials, at least the right-leaning millennials, excited.
On the undocumented immigration front, there's one way you stop it, and that's incarcerating employers of undocumented immigrants. Neither party is going to fight for that. No one's serious about it. It's all theater, except unlike Broadway, this kind of theater creates jobs. It's just going to be used to get a certain number of people angry enough to go vote for the GOP candidate. Millennials have not yet been manipulated into that and into falling for it, because the GOP is not serious about ending undocumented immigration. If they were, they would say, start incarcerating the white people who hire them. No one in either party says it. It's a big joke, and it's all meant to inflame tensions. I'm very proud that the millennial generation is too smart generally to fall for it.
Nice.
Yes, absolutely. I would disagree with you there. I think there are Republicans who are serious about fixing our border system, but they're not listened to because they're not demeaning people. And that's what gets everybody excited.
I think you're right about that, and I don't think the racism sells. But at the same time, you know, what I don't hear on the news is that We've never had more deportations. We've never had more troops at the border. Illegal immigration is at a net zero increase, and there's no way Donald Trump or anybody else is ever going to build a wall through the forests, through the valleys, the rivers, the private properties, and the mountains that separate these two countries.
Wait, he's not going to build the wall. Mexico's going to build the wall.
And they're going to pay
us.
for it for us. That's right.
Yes.
There is a river that separates us, though, that you could kind of figure some. Have you been to the border?
Yeah, I have. And, again, undocumented immigration is not the biggest threat to the millennial economy. Undocumented immigrants are not to blame for the outsourcing of American jobs, for massive income inequality, for our jobs being outsourced. The culprit for our losing our jobs are automation, deindustrialization, and outsourcing, not undocumented workers. But blaming people at the bottom of the economic ladder for the problems in the middle of the economic ladder gets people at the top of the economic ladder elected and reelected. Doesn't actually solve problems.
And we're talking about millennials. We're talking about the issues, and you're bringing it up and sort of delineating that. We're also talking about how we're reaching people. I would say that your boss and my former boss, Rand Paul, is the person who has the message that's better and resonates with millennials, but also hires smart guys like you to get that message out there in the way that millennials are consuming news. What is it that you're doing? What is it that Rand's doing with the campaign that other Republicans are clueless about or haven't done enough of?
So
Specifics.
One thing I definitely wanted to bring up is this concept of native advertising, being here at Adweek, which is where you're essentially building your message within an ad without people realizing it's an ad. So this example that I'm going to say wasn't for Senator Paul, but it was for a client of mine who was against the Iran deal that just passed. So we, during the first debate in Ohio, we were the first political group, to have a paid sponsored Snapchat filter. We had in one day in Ohio, 178,000 uses of that filter, which asked people, it was this arrow down and it had this circle, and people could take selfies or they could take a picture, whatever that they wanted, and it said, how I feel about the bad Iran deal. And they put whatever and however that they felt. I saw someone take a pile of horse dung and they put that in there. Somebody had sad faces, they put emojis. That is the future of advertising. That is the future. Is that native advertising. There's a company called Taboola, too, who owns ad space on a bunch of news websites, and you can actually create and build, and we did this around Senator Paul's announcement, you create articles that look like they're articles on those news websites, and through Taboola, you place them on those websites. BuzzFeed does this a lot. If you go to BuzzFeed's homepage, it's sponsored content that looks very similar to the content that is natively on BuzzFeed. That's the future of advertising, not a 30-second TV ad of some stodgy politician with everything scripted, telling you exactly how, where they are on some issue. And it's not because the content of that doesn't matter. It's because people won't sit and watch for 30 seconds that video when they can watch a cat gif. That's exactly why.
Do you think that we may see the day where where ads can have comment sections?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Engagement with ads is everything. And the non-political space is way ahead of the political space on this still. I mean, you saw last cycle Obama advertised in Xbox games and stuff like that, which I think was a waste of money. But still, that kind of new advertising, pushing the boundaries outside of normal Fox News and CNN, that's the future.
And it's the engagement that excites people. It's
Of
being
course.
able to comment, be interactive, and have their voices heard. So, a lot of us joked about John McCain's Twitter campaign in 2008 and how the joke it was compared to Barack Obama. I'm assuming things kind of improved with Mitt Romney some. You would probably know.
No,
Vince. How bad was it?
Well, there was a really funny article that you probably saw that it took something like 20 people to approve a tweet for Mitt Romney before it could go out. I can tell you that's not the case on Senator Paul's campaign.
Well, that's what I would ask now. In this campaign, I'm sure we have a mixed audience politically here and on this stage. We know what you're doing with Rand Paul. You've explained that. Like, what is Hillary doing that maybe is improved upon Barack Obama or Bernie Sanders? Is maybe the oldest guy have the better engagement with millennials through that?
She's running. I actually think one of the best uses of digital the entire cycle so far on both sides is Hillary Clinton's Snapchat. I really encourage everybody to follow her on Snapchat. Get Snapchat just to follow her. It is amazing. She's doing a wonderful, wonderful job. It's engaging. It's interesting. It reaches that younger audience. I I think, though, from a data and organization perspective, I'm not seeing anything like President Obama did, where he was sending me an email on Election Day. This was the best use of data I've ever seen in politics. He sent me an email on Election Day with the Facebook profile pictures of my friends in Colorado and Wisconsin and Florida and all these swing states pulled up that he knew from me opting in through my Facebook. These were my friends on Facebook, and they were in swing states. How incredibly powerful is that? And with one click, I could go and I could write on my friend Hannah's wall in Ohio and tell her to get out for Barack Obama. Wow. That is powerful, and I actually think we've almost slipped a little bit backwards since something like that, because it takes a ton of money to do something like that, and I haven't seen Hillary do something to that degree.
Hillary has, like, the best Snapchat of 2016.
No, it's
when
awesome.
she says, I'm just chilling in Cedar Rapids.
Yeah.
I'm just chilling in Cedar Rapids. If you guys haven't seen it, it's fantastic. Yeah. It's a bottle of iced tea.
But likewise, the Democrats have a problem in midterm elections because the Republicans have a guaranteed 23% of the electorate that's going to go vote no matter what. And the Democrats, we saw the last two midterms haplessly trying to corral the other 77% to go out and vote. I don't think most Democrats even knew there was an election last fall. Barack Obama going on Between Two Ferns to encourage young people to sign up for the exchange on the ACA website did succeed in driving the numbers up, and to me was the only serious effort I saw most Democrats make to get the vote out last year. All the social media wonders in the world didn't help the party one bit when you have an apathetic electorate unless it's a presidential year.
So the coolest conference I've ever been to was when Google invited me to in Anaheim a few months ago. It was called VidCon. I don't know if anyone's ever been there. It blew my mind, y'all. It blew my mind. The first day that I got there, this car pulled up, and someone walked out, and 200 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old people ran to this car to take pictures, screaming, pushing each other over. Someone got out who I'd never seen before. It was a YouTube star. Right. The whole conference is about YouTube celebrities and YouTube stars. And to your point about Barack Obama and Between Two Ferns, that also is the future. There's a whole subculture, right, of these YouTube stars and people that are called content creators, and there's all this world that I learned about. And there are people that sell, right, time on those shows, on YouTube star shows. Most of those shows, large programs, have more subscribers than watch Bill O'Reilly, even, who's the biggest show on cable news. That's amazing, and that's so powerful, and that's how young people are getting their news and information, is through these content creators. So how can we insert political conversation and commentary into these YouTube videos?
I was part of a political panel at VidCon in Los Angeles 3 years ago. I'm 41 now. Never have I felt so old in my entire life. He's not wrong. It was 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds who knew what they were doing on YouTube. And I didn't know who Jenna Marbles was, but somebody I was with was very excited to meet her.
If I wanted to be rich very quickly, I would open up a hair dye booth there, because everyone had pink and purple and blue hair at that conference.
Right. Well, and that sort of speaks to, it's a different ball game with millennials and the younger generations we keep speaking about. We do have a few minutes left here. If anybody in the audience has a question for me or any of the panelists up here. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. You guys have honestly been speaking to what's been going on in my house. I'm a millennial, and I have a daughter that's going to be voting in 2020. And what I know, it's crazy, right? I know. We've had great conversations surrounding that, by the way. I honestly want to know from you guys, what are your thoughts about how far we are, and you kind of spoke to that at the end of your comments, how far we are away from where the voters would be in 2020 in terms of reaching them, and why we haven't seen the candidates kind of go more towards social and do more things that would draw in voters like millennials and the people.
You mean messaging? Like how the candidates speak, some of the clips?
Right, exactly. And just also your thoughts on how different the race in 2016 will be from the race in 2020 in terms of what they will be doing surrounding social and trying to draw on these voters.
Well, the first rule is anybody that predicts how elections will go on the news are 100% accurate. They're always, I'm kidding. They're never, that's actually a rule of mine. I'm always just hesitant to debate, well, this person will do better, because these things turn upside down. But gentlemen, do you have any thoughts on what she said?
You talk with any campaign flack, and they'll tell you just the differences from 8 to 12 are astronomical, and then from 12 to 16, it might as well be just completely different landscape. The things, I mean, just yesterday talking with, pitching and talking through with high-level campaign staff, there's like, in 2012, these ideas would have been killed instantly. Now it's the only thing we want to do, right? And so and those ideas are clearly like Snapchat filters, engagement on different platforms, non-traditional, hitting that market where that market lives and speaking to that market the way it likes to be spoken to. The idea of like the talking to camera, like walking through your farm, like with your family, petting your golden retriever, like America for America for America. Like that's gone. It's gone. It's just gone. It's not happening anymore. And so to predict, I'm super excited about it. I don't think there's a better time ever in the history of politics to predict 2016. I mean, just ostensibly based on what happened in the last 2 cycles and how fast it's changed. I mean, I think we're looking at one of the most engaged, fascinating elections, that we've ever gone through.
If people show up to vote, in the late 1980s, they put forth the motor voter bill, which would automatically register every American to vote as soon as they got their driver's license. Seems like a really smart thing to do because it's a bit of a hassle to go vote. It shouldn't be, but it's always been designed that way. Let's never forget the founders only thought that white landowning men should be allowed to vote, and every other class that's ever gotten the vote has had to fight for it, and they still make it inconvenient to do. President Bush Sr. vetoed it, saying that it's undemocratic to force people to vote. Well, that was what grown-ups call a lie. It didn't force anyone to vote, it just got you registered. A smart Democrat, and I don't know if our Congress has those, but a smart Democrat would bring this bill back up now because in the age of social media, hell yeah, millennials would get galvanized behind a motor voter bill that made it easier. And not that it's that difficult, but you know what a hassle life is, and people put it off, and then it's election day and it's too late. And that's sort of by design, because the people who own this country don't want that many young people showing up on election day. Always how it's been. In the era of Facebook, it'd be a really smart campaign for a Democrat right now, or a smart Republican, to bring motor voter back as a way of making it easier for young people to engage, because all the Facebook posts don't mean nothing if nobody shows up on election day.
I just want to say Rand Paul would love if young people came out.
Absolutely. And he's the only he's the only one. Maybe Trump.
Zing.
We've got a few more minutes. Right there, and the man will get you right next, and that's
more
probably
Vincent, but if you had $1 million to spend to reach millennials, how would you spend it?
It's a great question.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
$1 million just to reach millennials. There was actually a study that just came out, even though we've talked about Snapchat, and I've seen a lot of good success with spending money on Instagram reaching millennials. Facebook is still the place. Even so, my 14-year-old cousin said Facebook's for losers now, but she's still on there, okay? They're all, they're on there, but they don't take, yeah. So I would run a lot of money on things like Snapchat filters. I'd spend a lot of money on Instagram, which I'm seeing a lot of success. Instagram just opened up their entire advertising platform now. It's integrated well with Facebook. And what I'm seeing is that the interactions are the inverse of Facebook ads. Facebook ads, the people that interact on issues like immigration are older, and it's younger people that are interacting with on places like Instagram. And then I would spend a significant amount of money on places like iHeartRadio and Pandora. And also, I would do more native text advertising, like on that site, Taboola.
I'd pour it all into MySpace and Google+.
Let's take one more question here, and I think that's about all the time we'll have.
An article just came out, I think it was on the Huffington Post, that says that Republicans, Democrats, and pretty much everybody agrees that Citizen United is not good. Can you give us your thoughts, given that it's advertising week?
I don't think most people agree.
And advertising is going to play a big role. The main issue here, since you're talking about technology, is ad blockers, which is something that has been circulating in every single event that we have been going to. So Citizens United, ad blockers, technology, politics.
Spending big money to keep people from spending big money on elections is a tricky thing, and I don't think most people know about Citizens United. I mean, the irony of Citizens United is the first folks to get hurt by it, arguably, were Republican primary voters in 2012 when Mitt Romney bought their nomination. And, I don't think that there's been any, there have been very, very few political figures who can speak out against it because they're all beholden to big money. So it's going to take somebody pledging to serve one term and destroy it all and wreck their political career to get rid of it. And I still don't know if that'll be enough, because Citizens United is an extension of how it's always been in this country. The haves have bought off their politicians, and the have-nots have not. And until people even understand that it pretty much just means you can buy anybody, and so far Donald Trump is the only person to tell the truth about that on a debate stage. I don't think the awareness is there. I think that people in this room care. I think there's people on the left who know it's bad. There's people on the right, some people on the right who know it's bad. It's going to hurt Republicans too down the road. But I think that it's more important to get the awareness out there, because that's the sort of movement that will only, that's the sort of action that will only come from a movement. The leaders will not do anything. The people will have to lead on it.
So you still have to run a good campaign. Look at Scott Walker. Look at Rick Perry. They had millions and millions of dollars in super PACs that didn't matter because they didn't have the right message, they weren't organized, and they weren't running good campaigns. So Citizens United is about free speech, right? And in this country, we believe in free speech. It's in the First Amendment. So that's what Citizens United is about. It's
Those
here
with
to
more
stay.
money have more speech.
But my point is, even if you have money, look at Scott Walker. He raised millions and millions of dollars. It didn't matter. So we're actually seeing this cycle now, kind of a reverse, where there's a whole thought process now that what's referred to as hard dollars, where we have these limits from McCain-Feingold and these other bills, that actually matters more, because that's the campaign that's controlling that. And the campaign still matters, and hard dollars still matter. And small dollar donations that keep going up and up and up still matter. 1 in 75 people in this country gave to Barack Obama. That's a lot of people. And that's exciting for our country. So as there's all this big money, there's also an increase in small money, so I don't see any issue with Citizens United.
Well, it looks like we're out of time. They're going to kill me if we go any further. I see some more hands up. I wish we had time to get to them, but I appreciate it. Thank y'all for being here today, and to all my guests, and let's make the country better.
Thank you all.
Great again.